Organized planning is very, very important. You follow this particular lesson to the letter, and you have done yourself a big favor. Organized planning is the crystallization of desire into action. Well, we've gone 4 or 5, now we're at number 6. This is vitally important, organized planning. You follow this particular lesson to the letter, and you have done yourself a big favor. You see, without an organized plan, you become the plaything for what's going on around you. And that's what most people do. They're pulled here and there and all over the place. People's suggestion, the radio, the television, on and on it goes. You want to take control. Rather than work from the outside in, you want to work from the inside out. This is where you go from the abstract to the concrete with your desire. It's where it's the crystallization of your desire into action. Now, Napoleon Hill dedicated, in my particular lesson, 60 pages to this one subject. 60. That's almost twice as many as the other principles that he was working with. Organized planning is very, very important. Now, to execute this step properly, it's not just your business or your idea that must get organized. You know, it's also you as an individual. You see, we've got to get ourselves going. We've got to get ourselves properly organized, not just the business or the idea. Now, he's got 4 steps here. A, ally yourself with a group of as many people as you may need for the creation and carrying out of your plan, making use of the mastermind principle described in a latter chapter. Compliance with the instructions is absolutely essential. Don't neglect this. B, before forming your mastermind alliance, decide what advantages and benefits you may offer the individual members of your group in return for their cooperation. No intelligent person would either request or expect to work without adequate compensation, although this may not always be in the form of money. C, arrange to meet with the members of your mastermind group at least twice a week, and more often, if possible, until you have jointly perfected the necessary plan or the plans for the accumulation of money. Now, D, maintain perfect harmony between yourself and every member of your mastermind group. Napoleon Hill was emphatic when he pointed out that if you fail to carry out this instruction to the letter, you may expect to meet with failure. Now, Hill knew something about this. This was a stickling point with his mentor, Andrew Carnegie. If people didn't work in harmony, like he said, he made room for somebody to take their place. That was essential. Do you know, and when you stop and think about this, it's so important. If people are not working in harmony, what's going on? You've got all kinds of chaotic energy going on, and that's what manifests in results. When you've got a team that are really working smoothly and in harmony, like we mentioned with Knute Rockne, his team was in harmony because that's the kind of leadership he provided. That's the kind you want to provide. That's the kind of leadership, and that's the kind of lesson that you want to follow. Keep in mind these important facts. First, you're engaged in an undertaking of major importance to you. To be sure of success, you must have plans which are faultless. Second, you must have the advantage of the experience, education, native ability, and imagination of other minds. This is in harmony with the methods followed by every person who has ever accumulated great fortunes, and goodness knows, no one knew them better than Hill. And he points out if the first plan which you adopt does not work successfully, replace it with a new plan. If this plan fails to work, replace it with another one, in turn, and another one, and so on, until you find a plan which does work. All right? Right here is the point at which the majority of people meet with failure because of their lack of persistence in creating new plans to take the place of those that fail. All these top leaders, Edison, James J. Hill, Henry Ford, they were persistent. They had the picture in their mind. Think about it for a minute. James J. Hill, he's going to build a railroad from the east to the west coast of the United States. Most people wouldn't even be able to conceive the idea. He not only conceived it, he did it, but he met with failure. It was temporary defeat. And Hill points out that no follower of this philosophy can reasonably expect to accumulate a fortune without experiencing temporary defeat. And that's the way Hill looked at it. He was building his railroad. He failed a few times, run out of money, raised some more money. But he kept the picture in his mind. He changed the plan, but he never changed the picture. See, a very good part of organized planning principle is dedicated to leadership. It's very, very important. Hill points out there are two types of people in the world. One type is known as leaders and the other as followers. You got to decide at the outset whether you tend to become a leader in your chosen calling or remain a follower. Now, there's two forms of leadership. The first, and by far the most effective, is leadership by consent and with the sympathy of the followers. The second is leadership by force, without consent and sympathy of the followers. You see, Napoleon Hill outlined 11 major attributes of leadership. But you've got to get it straight first. Is it going to be by consent or is it going to be by force? See, if it's by force, there's a long, long history of people that have lost. They would win for a short period of time, but ultimately they would lose if they're operating by force. These were the dictators. These were the ones that it was their way or the highway. And history has proved that it doesn't work. For some of the greatest leaders, where we've already talked about Knute Rockne, one of the greatest leaders, there was no force there. He created the harmony that Napoleon Hill talks about, that Andrew Carnegie insists upon, and that you want to insist upon. Now, let's take a look at the 11 major attributes of leadership. The first one was unwavering courage. I don't think anybody's going to want to follow someone that doesn't demonstrate courage in their decision and in their way of living. They're not going to want to follow them. So you've got to have this unwavering courage. The second one is in self-control. Now think for a moment. If you're going to follow someone, you want to follow someone who's in charge of themselves. If they can't control themselves, how are they ever going to control anything else? So self-control was another major part. The third one is a keen sense of justice. My goodness, that is so important. Any one of these 11 attributes are vitally important, but the keen sense of justice, that's very, very important. Spend some time thinking about this. You may sit down with an associate or one of your closest advisors and discuss each one of these 11 points. The fourth one is definiteness of decision. Now, we point out in the second on decision, the only prerequisite to making a decision is, do you want to? You don't have to know how to do it. In fact, if you're going after a proper goal, you won't know how to do it. But you've got to be definite insofar as your decisions are concerned. Number 5 is definiteness of plans. You're going to be definite about your plans. Now, you're going to find that you probably have to change your plan. You may have to change your plan a lot of times. I think Edison's recorded he changed his plan 10,000 times before he came up with the incandescent light. But you've got to have a definite plan. And that's the plan you're going to follow. You never change the goal, change the plan. Number 6, the habit of doing more than you're being paid for. You know, that is probably one of the greatest lessons that I learned in all of Napoleon Hill's material. That was demonstrated by my mother. I saw my own mother doing that, who was a phenomenal example for my brother and sister and myself in growing up. She was just a great example. She always went the extra mile. She always did a little more than she was being paid for. And the people that do that ultimately get paid for more than they're doing. It's a bit of a paradox, and it's confusing to some people. Just be prepared to do more than you're being paid for. Number 7, a pleasing personality. So, you know, we talk about number 7, a pleasing personality, and we're relating this to leadership. I think Zig Ziglar put it very well. God bless him, he's gone now, but he gave us some great information. He said, be strong, but not rude. Be kind, but not weak. Be humble, but not timid. Be proud, but not arrogant. They were such great lessons that he gave us. And I think they're lessons that we can follow. We can follow them to the letter. Now let's take a look at number 8, sympathy and understanding. Well, you know, understanding comes out in almost all of Hill's lessons. I may change that to empathy from sympathy. The ability to get into the other person's mind and see it from their point of view. Understand why they're doing what they're doing. why they're saying what they're saying. I think Covey put it very well. He said, listen not to hear, but to understand. When you're communicating with someone, don't listen to hear, listen to understand. Well, number 8, sympathy and understanding. Number 9, mastery of detail. In other words, get the details, all right? Get the details. Do you know there's a cute story about Michelangelo. Michelangelo was creating David. And a friend dropped by one day, and he was admiring David, and he said, boy, you're doing a great job. Then the friend went away on a vacation. He was gone for a few months, and he came back, and he went back to visit his old buddy, Michelangelo. And he looked, and he said, I see you haven't been working on David. He said, I haven't been working on him. He said, I worked on him every day that you were gone. He said, I fixed the fingernail on the right hand. I fixed the nostril, the left side of the nostril. I got both eyebrows totally straightened out. And the toes, I've got the toes perfect. Well, the guy said, yeah, he says they're trifles. Michelangelo looked at him, he said, well, they may be trifles, but let me tell you something. Trifles make perfection, and perfection is no trifle. And it ties into mastery of detail. See, Michelangelo, he was a master of detail. Number 10, willingness to assume full responsibility. Without question, everyone should take full responsibility for their life, for what they're doing, for the results they're getting. And if you're going to be a leader, you've got to take full responsibility for everything that happens under your leadership. And sometimes it may not be what you're doing. This is very, very important. Number 11, cooperation. Where there's no cooperation, there's no harmony. Where there's no harmony, what did Carnegie say? He'd make room for a person that brought the harmony. You've got to have cooperation. There's got to be cooperation between you and the people you're leading. And we've got to understand how to do that. And we're going to find that the other 10 attributes that we're talking about here will probably bring that cooperation right up to the surface. These are important points. They're important points for you to really pay attention to. I would review this often. Maybe take and write each one of them out on a slip of paper. Put it in your pocket. Carry it around with you. Just bring it out. Keep reviewing it on a daily basis until you get to the point where, boom, it's habitual in your thinking. And when it becomes habitual in your thinking, you become a habitually strong leader. There's another important aspect of the organized planning that I'm going to recommend you really burn into your mind because it's very important and it's something you can really turn into a habitual behavioral pattern that'll make you a much stronger leader. And it's the principle of QQS. You might write that down, QQS. That's quality and quantity of service rendered and the spirit in which it is rendered. That'll determine, to a large extent, the price and the duration of employment. Now think about this for a moment. Quality of service shall be construed to mean the performance of every detail in connection with your position in the most efficient manner possible, with the object of greater efficiency always in mind. Quantity of service should be understood to mean the habit of rendering all the service of which you are capable at all times, with the purpose of increasing the amount of service rendered as greater skills develop. Now, spirit of service shall be construed to mean the habit of agreeable, harmonious conduct with all, and that's going to induce cooperation in association with your fellow people that you're working with, the employees or whatever. Now this next part, you want to put a big, important stamp in your mind about it, on self-analysis, our personal inventory. Let's take a look at what is going on inside in our life. You see, ultimately the results I get are going to be determined by what's going on in Bob's mind. It's going to be exactly the same as you. Self-analysis of personal inventory is vital. I think this is probably why Napoleon Hill did a respectable amount of research into this area. And he emphasized time and time again that a person thoroughly analyze themselves, what they're doing and what they're not doing. I know personally over the years, self-analysis has really made a big difference for me. I've been involved in doing this for many, many years now. And it's a very important part of everything that I do. I don't care what it is I'm doing or who I'm doing it with. I've got a magnificent library of books, no question about it. And I keep building it, I keep expanding on it. There's one book that falls into this category that probably stands out over all the others. It was given to me by a woman in a seminar many, many years ago. It's Vernon Howard's book, Mystic Path to Cosmic Power. Vernon Howard, The Mystic Path to Cosmic Power. It's probably one of the best books that I have ever read on introspection. And since everything happens in our outside world is a reflection of what's going on in the inside world, it's something that we want to pay special attention to. Now, Napoleon Hill felt it a very important part of our study. I do as well. And the more I study this, the more I'm convinced that it is. So you might want to get a hold of Vernon Howard's book. Get into these success principles because they're going to cause you to look at you. Now, he talks about organized planning in all areas. We need to plan insofar as our business is concerned, no question about it. But we also have to look at our business as a reflection of ourselves. We're going to make it work or we're not going to make it work. So we really want to spend time looking at ourselves and taking these success principles and say, how am I incorporating those with my life? Super important subject, self-analysis. Hill thought it was important, so do I. I want you to think it's important. No follower of this philosophy can reasonably expect to accumulate a fortune without experiencing temporary defeat. You are engaged in an undertaking of major importance to you. To be sure of success, you must have plans which are faultless. Get out your notebook. Write organized planning in capitals at the top of the page. And then I'm going to use this principle in the following way. And then finish that sentence in your notebook. Don't overthink it. Just tune into your own powerful intuition and record on paper what comes to you. Do it now.